The spear hit the stone floor with a crack that echoed through the ancient corridor. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. The sound was sharp, final, like a judge's gavel. Sergeant James Caldwell stood at attention, his red uniform pressed and perfect. His white gloves gripped the ceremonial spear. His face showed nothing, but his heart was pounding. 3 feet in front of him stood Queen Camilla. She had been walking toward the restricted section of Windsor Castle. The area was closed. Under renovation, dangerous, the orders were clear. No one passes. Not staff, not visitors, not even royalty. James had trained for 12 years. He knew the protocols. He knew the chain of command. But nothing in his training prepared him for this exact moment. The Queen stopped. She looked at the spear blocking her path. Then she looked at James. Her expression was unreadable. Surprise? Anger? Disbelief. Behind her, 2 ladies-in-waiting froze. A palisade dropped his clipboard. The sound clattered in the silence. James kept his eyes forward. Military bearing, discipline. His grandfather had been a guardsman. His father, too. 3 generations of service. He would not break now, Sergeant, the Queen said quietly. Her voice was controlled but firm. Your Majesty. James didn't move. Didn't flinch. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. The morning had started normally. James arrived at 6. Changed into his uniform. Checked his equipment. The rotation schedule placed him at the East Wing corridor. A quiet post. Easy duty at 9:30. The facilities manager briefed the guard detail. Scaffolding work and Section D structural assessments. The entire wing sealed off until further notice. Security Protocol Alpha 7. No exceptions. James memorized it. Alpha 7 meant absolute restriction. Even emergency services needed authorization to enter. The protocol existed for safety, for security, for protection of both people and property. He took his position at 1000 hours. The corridor stretched before him. Dark wood panels. Oil paintings of long-dead monarchs. Suits of armor standing silent watch. At 11:15, he heard footsteps. James assumed it was another guard. Or maintenance. Someone who knew the rules. Then he saw the entourage. The Queen walked with purpose. She wore a blue dress suit. Pearl necklace. Her expression suggested she had somewhere important to be. The ladies-in-waiting followed. Then an aide. Then a security officer who looked increasingly uncomfortable. James realized what was happening. His stomach dropped. She was heading straight for the restricted zone. He had seconds to decide. Let her pass and violate direct orders. Or stop her and face consequences he couldn't imagine. His training kicked in. The oath he swore. To protect. To serve. To follow protocol, James stepped forward. Planted his feet. Brought the spear down. The crack echoed forever. Now they stood locked in this impossible moment. The Queen on one side of the spear, James on the other. The weight of duty pressing down on his shoulders like a physical thing. The corridor is closed, Your Majesty, James said, his voice steady despite everything. Protocol Alpha 7. No entry permitted. Camilla's eyes narrowed slightly. I'm aware there's construction, Sergeant. I need to retrieve something from my office. I cannot allow passage, ma'am. Each word felt like lifting stone. The orders are absolute, one of the ladies-in-waiting gasped. Actually gasped. As if James had done something unspeakable, the security officer behind the Queen reached for his radio. His hand trembling. James knew what came next. This would go up the chain, fast. His career hung in the balance. Maybe more than his career. But the spear stayed down. The Queen took one step closer. Asterisk, her shoes clicked on the marble. Once, twice. She stood so close now that James could see the details of her jewelry. The slight crease between her eyebrows. Sergeant Caldwell. She read his name tag. Her tone shifted. Not angry. Something else. Testing. Do you understand who I am? Yes, Your Majesty. And you're still refusing me entry? I'm following my orders, ma'am. Huh? The aide behind her stepped forward. Young, nervous, sweating. Your Majesty, perhaps we could contact Camilla raised one hand. Silent him. Her eyes never left James. The corridor felt smaller, hotter. James's uniform collar seemed tight. But he didn't move, didn't adjust, didn't break position. Somewhere in the castle, a clock chimed. 11-30. The security officer finally spoke into his radio. Low and urgent. We have a situation at East Wing Checkpoint 7. Requesting immediate supervisor presence. ... Knew what it meant. Within minutes, senior officers would arrive. His commander, maybe higher. They would see what he'd done. How he'd stopped the Queen. Some would call it duty. Others would call it career suicide. Behind the Queen, tourists had gathered at the far end of the corridor. Phones out. Recording. This moment would be. Online within the hour. Analyzed. Debated. Turned into headlines. Camilla studied him. Really looked at him. Not with anger now. Something closer to curiosity. How long have you served, Sergeant? 12 years, ma'am. And in those 12 years, have you ever stopped a member of the royal family? No, Your Majesty. Then why today? James chose his words carefully. Because my duty is to protect. Even if that protection is from potential danger in an unsecured area, something flickered in her expression. Respect? Understanding? James couldn't tell. One of the ladies in waiting leaned in and whispered. Camilla listened. Nodded once, but didn't move. The tension hung thick. Every person in that corridor knew this was unprecedented. Guards bowed. They stepped aside. They followed orders that made sense. They didn't block Queens. Heavy footsteps approached, fast. Multiple people. Colonel Marcus Webb appeared around the corner. 40 years of service in his bearing. Medals on his chest. Authority in every stride. Behind him came 2 captains and the palace security chief. Webb took in the scene instantly. The Queen. The spear. James standing firm, his face revealed nothing. Your Majesty, Webb bowed crisply. Colonel Webb, head of guard operations. I understand there's been an incident. Your sergeant is preventing me from accessing my office, Camilla said. Not complaining. Simply stating fact. Webb turned to James. Sergeant Caldwell, port. James kept his eyes forward. Military precision. Sir, posted at Checkpoint 7 under Protocol Alpha 7. At 11:15 hours, Her Majesty approached the restricted zone. I informed her of the closure and maintained position as ordered. You denied the Queen passage? I enforced the security protocol, sir. The ladies in waiting exchanged looks. The young aide had gone pale. Webb's jaw tightened. Just slightly. Enough for James to notice.
Asked.
Your Majesty, Webb said carefully. Protocol Alpha 7 is our highest restriction level. It's implemented when areas pose immediate safety risks. The sergeant was following explicit orders. I need to retrieve documents from my office, Colonel. Camilla's voice remained calm, patient, but firm. Important documents. Time sensitive. I understand, ma'am. However, the structural engineers reported unstable flooring in that section this morning. Until it's certified safe? How long? Possibly by this afternoon. Tomorrow at the latest? Camilla considered this. The seconds stretched. James felt sweat forming under his bearskin cap. His arms stayed rigid. The spear didn't waver. Webb glanced at him. Just once, James couldn't read it. Approval. Warning. Disappointment? Sergeant Caldwell, Webb said. You may stand at ease, sir. James didn't move the spear, said at ease. Sergeant. With respect, sir. My orders were to maintain position until relieved by proper authority. Has Protocol Alpha 7 been lifted? Webb's eyes narrowed. It has not. Then I cannot abandon my post, sir. A sound escaped from one of the captains. Almost a laugh. Quickly suppressed, the Queen watched this exchange with growing interest. Her posture relaxed slightly, the rigid irritation fading into something else. Webb stepped closer to James, lowered his voice. "Sergeant, you're making this very difficult. I apologize, sir. But my orders are clear." Webb turned back to the Queen, his expression tight. Professional, but James could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, Your Majesty. "I apologize for this inconvenience. If you could provide me with the specific documents you need, I can have an engineer-escorted retrieval arranged within the hour." Camilla tilted her head slightly. "That won't be necessary, Colonel." Everyone froze. "Ma'am?" "I said it won't be necessary." She looked at James again, held his gaze. "Tell me, Sergeant, if I ordered you to let me pass, would you?" The question hung in the air like smoke. James felt every eye on him. Webb, the captain's, the security chief. "The phone camera is still recording from down the hall, Your Majesty," he said slowly. "My oath is to protect the crown. Sometimes that means protecting members of the royal family from harm, even if they don't see the danger." Silence. Then Camilla did something unexpected. She smiled. Not a polite smile. A real one. It reached her eyes, transformed her face. 12 years, you said?" "Yes, ma'am, and you've never failed in your duty." "I try not to, Your Majesty." She turned to Webb. "Colonel, I want this man's record on my desk by this afternoon." Webb stiffened. "Of course, Your Majesty. And I want to know why more of your guards don't show this level of dedication." James blinked. That wasn't what he expected. Camilla gestured to her entourage. "Come, we'll retrieve the documents tomorrow. When it's safe." She looked back at James one final time. "Carry on, Sergeant." "Thank you, Your Majesty." She walked away. Her ladies-in-waiting followed. The aides scrambled to keep up. Their footsteps faded down the corridor. The tourists lowered their phones. Disappointed the confrontation hadn't escalated, or maybe impressed by what they'd witnessed. Webb waited until the Queen was out of earshot. Then he stepped very close to James. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" "Followed orders, sir. You stopped the Queen Consort of England?" "I enforced a safety protocol, sir." Webb stared at him, long and hard. James kept his expression neutral, respectful, but he didn't apologize. Finally, Webb's face cracked, just barely. The hint of a smile. "You've got stones, Caldwell. I'll give you that." Step back. "You're dismissed. Report to my office at 1400 hours. "Yes, sir." Webb and his officers left. The corridor emptied. James stood alone at his post, spear still in hand. His legs felt weak. The adrenaline was wearing off. The full weight of what happened settling in. He'd stopped the Queen, refused her entry, stood his ground against royalty, and somehow he still had a job. His radio crackled. "Checkpoint 7, this is Central. You're relieved early." "Return to barracks," James acknowledged. Lifted his spear. Walked back down the corridor on unsteady legs. In the barracks, the other guards had already heard. News traveled fast in the palace. They stared as he entered. Some with respect, some with disbelief. One with barely concealed envy. "Is it true?" asked Private Morrison. Young, eager, 2 months into service. "Is what true? You really told the Queen no?" James unbuckled his ceremonial gear, hung his spear. "I enforce security protocols, but she's the Queen, and I'm a guardsman. I have a job to do." He changed into his regular uniform. His hands were still shaking slightly. He clenched them until they stopped. At 1400 hours, he stood outside Colonel Webb's office. The door was solid oak. Behind it, his future was being decided. He knocked. "Enter." James walked in, stood at attention. Webb sat behind his desk. Papers spread before him. James's service record, commendations, training scores. Everything laid bare. "Sit down, Sergeant." James sat, kept his back straight. Webb leaned back in his chair. "I've been head of Palace Guard operations for 8 years. In that time, I've seen guards freeze under pressure. I've seen them bend rules to avoid conflict. I've seen them forget their oath when it became inconvenient. James said nothing. I've never seen anyone do what you did today. Sir, I only Webb raised a hand. Let me finish. What you did was technically correct. Protocol Alpha 7 is absolute. It applies to everyone, even royalty. You followed your orders to the letter. He paused. Picked up a paper. However, you created an international incident. By now, this is on social media. News outlets. Royal watchers. Everyone's talking about the guard who stopped Queen Camilla. James felt his stomach drop. Some are calling you a hero. Others are saying you were insubordinate, disrespectful, that you should be dismissed. The room felt smaller. Webb set down the paper, looked James in the eye. The Queen called me personally 20 minutes ago. James's heart stopped. His entire career, his family legacy, everything he'd worked for, gone in one phone call. Webb's expression remained unreadable. She wanted to discuss your actions in detail. Yes, sir. I said she asked about your training, your record, your family background. Webb folded his hands. And then she said something interesting. Silence stretched. James barely breathed. She said you reminded her of someone. Her father. A military man. Someone who understood duty meant doing the hard thing. The right thing. Even when it cost you. James blinked. Tried to process this, Webb continued. She also said that in 40 years of public life, very few people have treated her like she needed protection. Most people assume royalty is untouchable. Above danger, beyond rules. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the palace grounds. But you didn't see a queen, did you? You saw someone walking into a potentially dangerous situation, and you stopped her. Not because she was royalty, because she was a person. That's exactly right, sir. Webb turned. The Queen has requested you be assigned to her personal security detail. Words didn't register at first. James thought he'd misheard. Sir? You heard me? She wants you on her protection team. Starting next week. James opened his mouth, closed it. I don't understand. Neither do I, frankly. But when the Queen requests something, we make it happen. Webb returned to his desk. You'll undergo additional training. Close protection protocols. Advanced threat assessment. It's an honor, Sergeant. One that rarely comes to someone your rank. I didn't do it for recognition, sir. I know. That's exactly why she chose you. Webb handed him a folder. Your new assignment details. Report to Captain Sterling Monday morning. He oversees Royal Protection operations. James took the folder. His hands felt numb. Dismissed, Sergeant. And Caldwell, sir? What you did today was brave. Stupid, maybe. But brave. Don't lose that. James saluted. Left the office. Walked through the corridor in a daze. The tourists were gone. The palace had returned to normal. But nothing felt normal. He'd stopped the Queen. And instead of ending his career, he'd been promoted. Outside, the afternoon sun was warm. James stood in the courtyard and let it sink in. His phone buzzed. Text message from his father. Saw the news. Very proud. Call me. Another from his grandfather. You did right, boy. Just like we taught you. James smiled. Put the phone away. That evening, the story exploded online. Video clips, photos, headlines in every major publication. Royal Guard refuses Queen entry. Social media divided duty or disrespect. Palace Guard blocks Camilla Queen stopped by her own security. What really happened? Comment sections filled with debate. Some praised James for following protocol. Others condemned him for disrespect. Royal experts analyzed every detail. Body language specialists broke down the confrontation, frame by frame. But James wasn't reading any of it. He sat in his small apartment. The folder opened on his table. His new assignment, close protection detail, meant different responsibilities. Higher stakes. More pressure. He'd be near the royal family constantly, traveling with them, standing between them and any threat. It was an honor. A career milestone most guards never reached, but it also meant more moments like today, more impossible decisions, more situations where duty and difficulty merged. James thought about his grandfather, a guardsman for 30 years. He'd once told James a story about standing post during a thunderstorm. Lightning struck nearby. The protocol was clear. Stay at your post unless ordered to move. So he stayed, soaked, thunder shaking the ground. Lightning bright as daylight. He stayed because that was the job. Duty isn't convenient, James, his grandfather had said. It's not comfortable. It asks you to be more than what's easy. That's what makes it duty. James understood that now more than ever. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Hello? Sergeant Caldwell? A woman's voice. Professional. Clipped accent. Yes. This is Caroline Fletcher, private secretary to Her Majesty Queen Camilla. I'm calling to arrange a meeting. James sat up straight. A meeting? Yes, tomorrow at 1000 hours. The Queen would like to speak with you privately before you begin your new assignment. Of course. Where should I report? The Queen's private sitting room. Someone will escort you from the east entrance. I'll be there. Excellent. Oh, in sergeant? Dress uniform. The line went dead. James set down the phone, stared at it. A private meeting with the Queen. No guards. No witnesses. Just the two of them. He had no idea what she wanted to say. That night, he barely slept. He rehearsed protocols in his head, reviewed proper forms of address, pressed his dress uniform twice to remove every wrinkle. At 9:30 the next morning, he arrived at the east entrance. A palisade was waiting. Sergeant Caldwell. Yes. Follow me, please. They walked through corridors James had never seen. Private quarters, away from the public areas. The decoration here was different, more personal. Photographs on walls. Fresh flowers. Signs of actual life. The aide stopped at an ornate door. Knocked softly. Enter, came Camilla's voice from within. The aide opened the door, gestured for James to enter, then closed it behind him. James found himself in a sitting room, comfortable, elegant, but not ostentatious. Windows overlooking the gardens. Paintings of countryside scenes. Queen Camilla sat in an armchair. Casual clothes. No formal jewelry. She looked more relaxed than yesterday. More human. Sergeant Caldwell. Thank you for coming, James bowed. Your Majesty, please sit. She gestured to the chair across from her. James sat. Kept his posture military-correct. Camilla studied him for a moment, then spoke. Asterisk. I imagine you've had an interesting 24 hours. Yes, ma'am. Very interesting, she smiled. I wanted to speak with you before the formal proceedings begin. Before the training, before you're surrounded by protocols and procedures again. James nodded. Stayed quiet. What you did yesterday could have gone very differently. You understand that? Yes, Your Majesty, if I had been angry. If I had insisted. If I had made it about authority rather than safety, your career would be over. I understood the risk, ma'am, and you did it anyway. She leaned forward slightly. Why? James chose his words carefully. Because my duty is to protect. Not to please. Not to accommodate. To protect. Even from themselves? Especially from themselves. With respect, ma'am. Camilla sat back. My father was military. Royal Navy. He understood duty in a way few people do. He once told me that real leadership isn't about power. It's about responsibility. The responsibility to make hard choices, to accept hard truths. She paused. Looked out the window. When you stopped me yesterday, you gave me a hard truth. That safety matters more than convenience. That protocols exist for reasons. That even a queen can make mistakes. You weren't making a mistake, Your Majesty. You simply didn't have all the information. Generously put, but the point stands. She turned back to him. Do you know why I requested you for my security detail? Colonel Webb mentioned you appreciated my dedication to duty. That's part of it. But there's more. She folded her hands. I need people around me who will tell me no, who will put safety above politeness, who understand that protecting someone sometimes means protecting them from their own decisions. James began to understand. Most people see the crown and they freeze. They defer. They assume we're somehow immune to normal rules. But we're not. We're people. We make mistakes. We get distracted. We need someone willing to step in and say this is wrong or this is dangerous, even when it's uncomfortable. I can do that, ma'am. I believe you can. I've seen it. She smiled. Though perhaps try to do it without creating international incidents next time. James felt himself relax slightly. I'll do my best, Your Majesty. I know you will. She stood. James immediately stood as well. You start your new assignment Monday. Captain Sterling will oversee your training. It's rigorous, demanding. Are you ready for that? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Good, she extended her hand. James hesitated for just a second, then shook it. Firm, brief, professional. Welcome to the team, Sergeant Caldwell. I look forward to working with you. The honor is mine, Your Majesty. She walked him to the door, opened it herself. The aide was waiting outside. As James turned to leave, Camilla spoke once more. Sergeant. One more thing. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. For yesterday. For doing the hard thing when easier options existed.
Old.
James bowed his head. Just doing my duty, Your Majesty. Yes, that's exactly what you were doing. The door closed. The aide led James back through the corridors. Outside, the morning was bright. Clear. James walked across the courtyard with a strange feeling in his chest. Pride? Maybe? Or purpose? Something solid and real. His phone buzzed. Message from Morrison. Everyone here is talking about you. You're a legend. James typed back. I'm just a guardsman. Same as you. But even as he wrote it, he knew things had changed. Would keep changing. Monday came quickly. James reported to Captain Sterling at 0700. Sterling was older, experienced a former SAS operative who'd transitioned to Royal Protection. Caldwell. Heard a lot about you, sir. We do things differently in close protection. It's not about standing still. It's about moving, thinking, anticipating threats before they materialize. I understand, sir. Do you? Because yesterday you stopped one potential threat. In close protection, you'll face dozens. Every day. Every event. Every public appearance. Sterling led him through a training facility. You'll learn surveillance detection. Advance work. Emergency medical response. Defensive driving. Threat assessment. By the time we're done, you'll see danger in things most people don't even notice. The training was intense. 16-hour days, physical conditioning, tactical scenarios, psychology of threats. James absorbed everything. He trained alongside 5 other guards, all experienced, all highly skilled. They watched him with mixture of respect and skepticism. On the 3rd day, they ran a simulation, a public event, crowd, multiple potential threats. James had to identify them before they became actual dangers. He spotted 3, missed 1. Sterling stopped the exercise. That 4th threat, the woman with the backpack near the exit, why didn't you flag her? James thought back. She looked harmless. Older woman, seemed like a tourist. She was carrying materials for a paint bomb attack. Not lethal, but damaging. Embarrassing. Sterling stepped closer. In this job, there's no such thing as harmless. You assess everyone. Every bag, every movement. You stop trusting your assumptions. James nodded. Learned. Improved. By Friday, he'd caught all 7 planted threats in the simulation. Sterling gave the smallest nod of approval. You're learning. That's good. But remember, real life isn't a simulation. Real threats don't follow scripts. They improvise. Adapt. You have to be better, yes, sir. The weekend came. James returned to his apartment exhausted. Every muscle ached. His mind felt stretched thin, but he felt ready. Monday morning, His first official day on the Queen's security detail, James reported in his new uniform. Slightly different insignia, different bearing. The team briefing was at ALC's 100. Captain Sterling. 5 other protection officers. They reviewed the day's schedule. Queen Camilla had a public engagement. A charity event for military families. Outdoor venue. Crowd of approximately 300. Moderate security concern. Caldwell, you're on inner perimeter. Stay within arm's reach of Her Majesty at all times. Read the crowd. Watch for anomalies. Anything feels wrong, you act immediately. Yes, sir. At 900 hours, they arrived at the venue. James took his position. The Queen emerged from her car, smiled at the waiting crowd, walked toward the entrance. James moved with her, eyes scanning, reading faces, body language, looking for anything out of place. Everything seemed normal, until it has a man in the crowd. Mid-30s, dark jacket despite the warm weather, hands in pockets, standing still while everyone else moved. His eyes weren't on the Queen, they were on the exit routes. James's training kicked in. He assessed in seconds. Wrong posture, wrong focus, wrong energy. He stepped slightly closer to Camilla, kept his body between her and the man, touched his earpiece. Sterling. Possible threat. Sector 3. Dark jacket, male, hands concealed. Sterling's voice came back immediately. Copy. Moving officers to intercept. The Queen continued greeting people, shaking hands, smiling, completely unaware. James kept his expression. Neutral, professional, but his hand moved to his side. Ready, 2 officers in plain clothes approached the man from different angles, casual, non-threatening. They engaged him in conversation. The man's hands came out of his pockets empty. He looked confused, answered their questions. After 30 seconds, one officer touched his earpiece. False alarm. He's event staff. Lost his credential. That's why he was checking exits. James exhaled slowly, released his ready position. The adrenaline faded, Sterling's voice in his ear. Good catch, Caldwell. Better safe than sorry, the event continued. 3 hours. Speeches, presentations, photographs. James stayed alert the entire time, scanning, watching, protecting when it was over. When the Queen was safely back in her car, Sterling approached him. That was textbook. You spotted the anomaly. Called it in. Maintained position. Exactly right. Thank you, sir. But don't expect praise every time. This is the job now. Every day. Every event. I understand, sir. A man in the crowd. Mid-30s. Dark jacket despite the warm weather. Hands in pockets. Standing still while everyone else moved. His eyes weren't on the Queen. They were on the exit routes. James's training kicked in. He assessed in seconds. Wrong posture. Wrong focus. Wrong energy. He stepped slightly closer to Camilla. Kept his body between her and the man. Touched his earpiece. Is Sterling. Possible threat. Sector 3. Dark jacket. Male. Hands concealed. Sterling's voice came back immediately. Copy. Moving officers to intercept. The Queen continued greeting people, shaking hands, smiling, completely unaware. James kept his expression. Neutral, professional, but his hand moved to his side. Ready, 2 officers in plain clothes approached the man from different angles, casual, non-threatening. They engaged him in conversation. The man's hands came out of his pockets empty. He looked confused. Answered their questions. After 30 seconds, one officer touched his earpiece. False alarm. He's event staff. Lost his credential. That's why he was checking exits. James exhaled slowly, released his ready position. The adrenaline faded, Sterling's voice in his ear. Good catch, Caldwell. Better safe than sorry, the event continued. 3 hours. Speeches, presentations, Photographs, James. Stayed alert the entire time, scanning, watching, protecting. When it was over, when the Queen was safely back in her car, Sterling approached him. That was textbook. You spotted the anomaly. Called it in. Maintained position. Exactly right. Thank you, sir. But don't expect praise every time. This is the job now. Every day. Every event. I understand, sir. Over the next 3 months, James became part of the rhythm. The constant vigilance. The travel. The long hours. The weight of responsibility. He accompanied the Queen to 15 public events, for private functions, to international trips. He learned her patterns, her preferences, the subtle signs when she was tired or stressed, and she learned to trust him. One afternoon, during a garden party at Windsor, a wasp flew near her face. Before anyone could react, James stepped forward, calm, controlled, guided it away with a gentle hand motion. Camilla looked at him, smiled. Always protecting, aren't you, Sergeant? From all threats, ma'am, large or small. The other guests laughed, but James meant it. Every threat mattered. Every moment required attention. In December, 6 months after the corridor incident, James was awarded a commendation. For exceptional service, for dedication beyond standard duty. The ceremony was small, private. The Queen presented it herself. Sergeant Caldwell has exemplified what it means to serve. Not with blind obedience, but with thoughtful dedication. Not by following orders blindly, but by understanding their purpose. She pinned the medal to his uniform, shook his hand. Thank you, ma'am. No, Sergeant. Thank you. That evening, James called his grandfather, told him about the commendation, about the 6 months, about everything. Sounds like you found your place, boy. I think I have, Granddad. Your father would be proud. I know I am. James smiled. Just doing my duty. Yes, but you're doing it right. That's what matters. After hanging up, James sat in his apartment, the medal on his table. His uniform hanging clean and pressed for tomorrow. He thought about that moment 6 months ago. The spear hitting the floor, the Queen's shocked expression, the impossible decision. Everything had changed because of that moment. His career, his purpose, his understanding of what duty truly meant. It wasn't about following orders blindly. It was about understanding why those orders existed, about protecting people, even from themselves, about having the courage to do the hard thing when the easy thing was right there. His phone buzzed. Message from Sterling. Early start tomorrow. Royal visit to military hospital. Briefing at O-5-30. Double quotes. James typed back, I'll be there. He would be. Just like always. Standing ready. Watching for threats. Protecting those who needed protecting. Because that's what guardsmen did. That's what he did. Not for recognition. Not for medals. Not for stories that would spread online or headlines that would be written. For duty. Pure and simple. The kind of duty that meant standing your ground when everyone expected you to move. The kind that meant saying no when yes would be easier. The kind that required courage not in grand gestures but in small moments. Daily choices. Constant vigilance. James stood. Walked to his window. Looked out at the lights of London. Somewhere out there, people were sharing stories about the guard who stopped a queen. Debating whether he was brave or foolish, whether he'd done right or wrong, but James knew the truth. He'd simply done his job. The job his grandfather had done. His father had done. The job that 3 generations of Caldwells had understood. To protect. To serve. To stand firm when others would falter, and tomorrow he'd do it again. The spear had hit the floor 6 months ago. That sharp crack that echoed through the corridor. That impossible moment that changed everything. But for James Caldwell, it wasn't the end of the story, it was just the beginning. He closed the curtains, set his alarm, laid out his uniform. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats to assess, new moments requiring split-second decisions. He was ready. he would always be ready, because that's what it meant to be a guardsman. Not someone who stood still, someone who stood firm, and James Caldwell would never forget the difference. The Queen had taught him that. On the day he stopped her, on the day he chose duty over ease, she'd looked at him with understanding, with respect, with the knowledge that he'd done exactly what needed doing, and in return, she'd given him more than a job. She'd given him purpose. James turned off the light. The metal gleamed once in the darkness before everything went black. Tomorrow would come soon. The uniform, the briefing, the protection detail. Another day of standing between safety and danger, between what was right and what was easy. Another day of doing his duty, and James wouldn't have it any other way.